Right, great to see everyone here. Thank you so much for joining me today and this morning about what about debates, to learn more about debates and be able to learn how you could add debates to your classes. So let's go ahead and first watch a video from Grace Choi, who is the USMBC Tokyo PAS, Public Affairs Sector, and we'll just get a chance to hear from her a little bit about the series.
本日はご参加いただき誠にありがとうございます。Hello everyone. My name is Grace Choi, and I'm an American diplomat working on education and exchanges at the United States Embassy in Tokyo. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar for English teachers, organized by Tokyo English Language Fellow Claire Lee in coordination with the U.S. Embassy. As you know, English is a language that allows us to communicate with people all around the world. Through these webinars, we hope you will learn about the benefits of communicative English teaching and how to implement it in your school and classroom. Because of your efforts, Japanese students will be able to interact with youth in other countries and become performers on a global stage. As a fellow educator, I know how important it is for teachers to update and improve their teaching methods, and I hope this webinar will provide you with that opportunity. Claire Sensei is an expert on this subject, and I'm sure you will benefit from her advice and guidance. Thank you for your dedication to teaching and to your students, and please enjoy the session. Thank you, and see you soon.
Thank you so much for watching that introduction from Grace Choi from the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo. So today's session is focused on adding debates to your classes. So how are we able to do that? This is mainly an introduction to that, and I will point you to some additional resources if you are already well-versed in debates in the classes. So let's first start off with introductions. I always love to see where everyone is from. So please share. Please share in the chat box your municipality, the age group of your students, and why you decided to join this workshop. So please just take a moment to share in the chat box. So for example, I would say, hello, I am from Los Angeles, California. I used to teach middle school, so 7th grade, which is in Japan, grade 1, grade 2, 1 or 2 in junior high. And then, but now I am doing some teacher training. And then maybe I'll share that I'm interested in debates because I think it's a great way to increase students' speaking skills. So let's see who we have here. Welcome, Leroy from Tokyo, 7th grade. Oh, great. So you have had some experience already, which is wonderful. Yeah. Welcome. Yes. Yeah, more teachers from Tokyo, junior high school. Wonderful. Kanagawa. Wonderful. Elementary. Wow, 3 to 6, all of the grades. Yeah. Hello, all the way from Nagoya. Yes. Welcome. You're 11 and 12. Okay, so you're the oldest students, high school students. Very nice, from Kyoto. Yeah, trying to introduce some debate activities. Great, we'll be talking a lot about different debate activities. Welcome, all the way from Hokkaido. Very nice. Elementary school, awesome. 13 to 15 years old. From Toyo, welcome. Hello, Natsuka Sensei. Very good to see you here today. Oh, welcome from Okinawa. Wow, great to see everyone all over Japan. I always love to see where you are from and see how all of you are so dedicated to teaching, waking up on a Saturday morning and spending your time to learn. That's really amazing to me that you would do that and that you are so dedicated to your craft. Awesome. Great. So don't know much about debates yet. Awesome. That's okay. We're starting from the beginning. You know, we're assuming that you may not know anything about debates. So this is really an introduction to debates. All right, let's go ahead. So just a reminder that today's session will be recorded. We record this so that we can add it to the U.S. Embassy YouTube channel. So if you have missed any of the previous webinars, you can always go to U.S. Embassy Tokyo and it will include the webinars that I've done, so you can go back and rewatch them. All right. So as for today's session, just some norms. Please have your mic off so we can't hear any background noise. I still want you to participate though, and we can do this by participating in the chat box. I always love to ask questions. So please go ahead and add your answers into the chat box. And when we do have a chance to share or unmute the mic, we'll have a chance to do that. And I like to reserve the end of the session for questions, but feel free to ask questions throughout the session, okay? All right, so a little bit about myself. My name is Claire. I'm an English language fellow here in Tokyo, and I have over 10 years of teaching and training experience. As I mentioned, I used to be a junior high school teacher, and I have taught all over the world in Vietnam, South Africa, the Philippines, and now here in Japan. So today's objectives are to give you an outline for a simple structure for a debate. I also want you to be able to gain some resources for debates for English as a foreign language, and consider, even if you can't do full debates, so perhaps you have some restrictions around that. Maybe you have a very busy curriculum, or maybe your students are very young, you can still add some debate elements to your classes. So we'll talk about that as well. So we'll first start off with what is a debate, right? What are debates? Why have debates in your classes? We'll look at some model debates, and then we'll have a structure of a debate and talk about some additional debate activities that we can add. So before we jump into the definition, I want you to please share, what do you know about debates? What do you know so far? So please go ahead. I think we have a variety of experiences. Some people said they don't know anything about debates. Some people said they've done it before in high school. So what do you know? Let's go ahead and share in the chat box. I'll just give you a minute or two to share what you know so far. What are some of your ideas? And you can even just say, I don't know. Okay, Yuko says, cons versus pros. Yes, that's right. And we'll talk about what those terms mean. Yes, so we talk about there's two sides in a debate. Okay? Absolutely. Debate focuses on crafting an argument that utilizes logic and evidence to persuade an audience. Absolutely, yes. So I love the different points there about logic, evidence. Those are important points. And the whole purpose is to convince, persuade the audience. Yeah, it requires critical thinking. Absolutely. It's for an exchange of ideas. Yes. And there are two teams, that's right. Two teams that are discussing one specific topic. Yeah. It can be difficult to choose the topic. Yes, absolutely. Yes, so you are figuring out, do you agree or disagree? Yeah, really nice work. Yes. You are going to be judged at the end. That's right. So there is some sort of, typically debates have some sort of judge. In Japan, the most popular format is parliamentary debates, which isn't really big in the US. That's actually very true. Yeah, I noticed that when I was looking at different debates. In Japan is parliamentary debates. Yeah, it's based on evidence. Absolutely. Really great points, everyone. Nice job. So let's jump into it. What are debates? So debates, as many of you mentioned, is a formal way of communicating to share arguments about a certain position. Oh, interesting. So I did not know this, but in elementary school, 6th graders used to have debates in the classroom, in Japanese class, but it disappeared from the text, but interesting. So you had a chance to debate in Japanese, but now students don't necessarily have experience with that. Yeah, so it is a way where they get to share their arguments. You take different positions. And it starts with some sort of resolution, right? What is a resolution? It is a statement about some topic. For example, students should not have homework, right? And it is usually, we'll talk about resolutions a little bit more because resolutions are very important. And then we have that resolution. And then we have two teams, one team that agrees and one team that disagrees with this resolution, this statement. And then this game has a structure, right? So students go back and forth to share their reasons and explanations for why they agree or disagree with the resolution. And there are many different formats, which may make it kind of confusing and overwhelming. I think someone mentioned about the parliamentary debate, which is one structure of this of debates. There are several others as well. Right. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about what is debate, and we will look at one together, not a full one because they do take quite a while, but we'll look at some points. Why should you have debates in your classes? So before, I know I shared one point, but before I share, please in the chat box share, why do you think that having debates is important? In the chat box, go ahead and share your ideas of why should we have debates in your classes. I'll just give everyone a minute to share in the chat box. Okay, so we have lots of answers coming in. Help students formulate opinions and build strong arguments. Excellent. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Today's topic is
We have
homework
nurture
should be
English
published.
speaking abilities,
Now, I welcome the Prime
especially
Minister to today's
interaction. Yes, very important. Debate is a great way to improve English skills. Yes, that's right. By doing debates in classes, we could nurture students' logical way of thinking, quick response, and so on. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be able to persuade others, which is one of the important skills for work in the future. Yes, persuasion is such an important skill. It is very important in debates, being able to persuade. What does that mean? What does that require? Yes, that's right. Yep, it can give students opportunity for critical thinking. Yeah, absolutely. Really nice answers, everyone. Yeah. So many of you have a lot of reasons why debate is important and why you should have them in your classes. One of them is to important presentation speaking. So students are presenting not just by themselves, they are in front of their peers, they are in front of the teacher. Sometimes I've had audience members from the community come in. For example, I've had parents and other people come in, so they were invited to listen to the debate, right? So the debates are public, they're presentations, right? And you get a chance to go back and forth and take turns. In addition, students who are quieter have a chance to share ideas, right? So it's really, really nice that because of the structure of debates, it requires that all students are speaking, and it gives them the time to be able to speak and share. In addition, you have a mix of different work. So you have two different teams, two different sides, but it requires both independent solo work, where students might have to do some research or write what their speeches would be, what they're going to say. There's also group work where students have to work together. And there may also be opportunities for pair work as well. Okay, so it can be fun and interesting. So especially if the resolution is on a topic that is interesting to students, this can be something that can be interesting for students to learn about and research and come up with arguments for, right? So this is also a great way to talk about difficult topics or controversial topics in the classroom. It also builds confidence and self-esteem and develops critical thinking skills. So many of you mentioned critical thinking as an important point, and that is very true, right? So it allows students to be able to think about, how do I make sure this argument is logical, and think deeper about it. Now, there are so many other skills that can be listed. Matsumoto mentioned logical thinking, quick thinking, listening skills, language skills, research skills. So there are a lot of great reasons why debates can be a good addition to your class. Okay. All right. So we are going to watch a model debate. We're not going to watch the whole thing. So one thing you will note is that the video is about, I believe, 20 minutes long, and we're not going to spend the entire time watching that, but that is an important point that I'd like for you to note, is that it is quite long, so sometimes debates can take quite a while. And let me just make this a higher resolution. Okay. So this is a model debate from this organization, PDA, that does debates, and this is a recording of one of those debates. So let me just go ahead and share. Right. All right, can everyone see this video? Okay, let me just add the closed captioning. Okay, so sorry, before we actually start, think about questions like, who is speaking? Which side or which argument are they taking on? What is the order? What kind of language is being used? And what kind of preparation do you think it took for this debate to take place, right? So let's go ahead and watch.
Speech within 3 minutes. Here.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Today's topic is, we should abolish homework. We define that we will abolish any and all kinds of homework. We will also abolish spring and summer vacation homework. We think Sweden has already abolished homework, so we would introduce a similar system in Japan. We have 2 points. The first point is that students will have more free time to pursue their own interests. The second point is that teachers will be able to give higher quality lessons to students. I will explain the first point, that students will have more free time to pursue their interests. We believe that right now, students have way too much homework. We think students have to complete 20 pages each of homework for all subjects: math, English, art, social studies, science. It's ridiculous completely. We think that in addition to this, they have to complete daily diaries or even book reports for their very long summer and spring vacations. Why is this bad? We have two reasons for this. The first reason is that students lose the motivation, not yet, to learn. We think that students would like to learn new things. We see the fascination with which little kids look at bugs or go into the streets to find new things that they can learn. But we think that when students have to work their way through endless sheets of homework, 20 to 30 pages each, it's boring for them and they lose interest in the subject. Which means that even if teachers give out homework to students, students don't learn this. They don't care about the subject and they forget it once their homework is done. But we think the second reason that this is bad is because that students don't have time to do what they are interested in. If you have a student who is interested in programming or maybe a type of art that schools do not provide for lessons, they have less time to pursue these interests because they have to spend so much time doing homework. In addition to this, we think students also have less time to play with their friends or pursue other activities which are very important for them. Yes?
Why can you guarantee that majority of students will start to do that valuable activity instead of playing game or watching YouTube and wasting time?
We think the reason that students waste time right now is because they are so tired by homework that they don't really want to do anything else after school is done. Imagine.
Thank you. Now I welcome the leader of the opposition to deliver a speech within 3 minutes. Here.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
We believe that we should not abolish the homework. First, let me rebut what the government team said. They said like the amount of homework would be ridiculously heavy, but we don't believe it is true because the teacher also care about the interaction between the friends, or they care about motivation of the child, so they will likely to actually modify the amount of the homework. And also, if you submit the homework, you can be praised by the teacher or the parents. So we believe the homework also, they motivate the child to study. But also they said, like they can do up to their interest, but we don't see any importance of it. They go to childhood. Everyone can play outside or they playing a video game 7 days, 24 hours. They say like this is because the tiredness of the homework, but we don't see it's likely. We say the child will likely to waste the time and just continuing watching the YouTube. So we don't see any importance of it. So let me explain, our points. We have 2 points. First, we believe the homework is an important process, a learning process. But second, we believe homework can provide a larger access to education opportunity. I will explain the first point, that is to say how the homework is vital in learning process.
Okay, we'll go ahead and pause there. As I mentioned, we're not going to spend the entire time watching this, but I'd like for you to go ahead and share. What did you notice? What did you notice about this video? Things like who was speaking, how did you know which side they were on? So the statement was homework should be abolished, right? What did you notice about the order of the speakers? What kind of language? And anything else that you may have noticed, how they're dressed, how they talk, how convincing their arguments were, right? So really interesting point, all girls versus all boys team. Okay, so I'm not quite sure if that was intentional or not, but that's really, really important, is to consider how you create the teams for your students, right? Strong speaking, excellent point, yeah. So they spoke clearly in a well-organized way. Very nice. And remember, they had time to prepare this. And so they're not just going to go ahead and come up with this right on the spot, right? They knew what the statement was going to be, the resolution that they were going to discuss, and then they had a chance to go ahead and prepare and then share. Yeah, maybe they're senior high school students. Actually, I think they are in university. Are they senior high school? They might be senior high school or university. So they are quite upper level. And so because they're older, this is going to be, a model. And when I say that, I mean, it's very, they've practiced a lot. This is the final rounds of this competition, right? So these are going to be some of the best speakers, really great students that are doing this, right? Your classes may or may not look like this, and that's okay, right? Because they're not necessarily at that level. Looks very formal. Yeah, notice they were dressed in suits, really formal. They mentioned how many points they have, so they structured that very clearly. Yes, their attire and language is very formal. They speak logically. My first point is yes. My second point, excellent. Yeah. Great points. So a lot of really great points. What I have to say is when you look at this model, sometimes it can be really overwhelming or defeating because you're like, oh, my students, it will take a lot of work for them to get to that level. And that is okay, right? This is a model from senior high or university level. So these are going to be students who are kind of at the top and have already had a chance to practice this. This is a team. They've practiced many times. They've had multiple competitions. And so this is not, this is more the final product, right? I wanted to show what does the final product look like, right? But your students may or may not be there. That's okay. They had to listen to their opponents because they had to rebut the opponents' arguments. Yes, very good. So notice they listened and they were taking notes because they were trying to see how can I, what we say in English, poke holes in the argument, right? The first speaker seemed to prepare before the session. Yeah, okay, yes. The second speaker reacted to the other one. Yes, that's right. So part of it is some preparation beforehand. Part of it is listening and then reacting, which is really difficult, right? I think even for English speakers, that's quite difficult. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and let me go ahead and share this again. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the resolution, right? The resolution that is going to be shared. Now, in the debate that we just listened to, the topic was homework should be abolished, right? Which might be a very interesting topic for students because they care a lot about homework and how much homework they have, right? Konishi, Kanke, and Collins in 2012 came up with this list of what will create a good proposition or resolution. So the first is that there should be some controversy, right? So some sort of contention, some debate around that issue, right? So if everyone agrees and says, if you say something like murder is bad, okay, I think there is no debate about that, right? There's no controversy. Everyone is going to say yes. If you say no, people are going to say, what's wrong with you, right? So it should allow for some controversy. There should be some two sides to it. In addition, there should be multiple arguments for and against. So it should have complexity that students are able to think of multiple reasons, right? It should be interesting and or relatable. So the topic about homework was relatable to students because they have homework and they maybe do have strong feelings about homework, right? But it can also be a topic that is of interest to students that isn't necessarily in their personal lives. So it can be something about, something about a recent law that was passed, right? Or it can be something that students have interest in, like should we allow plastic surgery? Should K-pop and collaborate with, whatever? And so many different aspects, like should we allow for foreign cultures to come and share, their music, blah blah blah. Whatever it is, you can have things that are either relatable or interesting. Now, very important, the wording should be neutral, right? Neutral. What does that mean? That in the statement itself, it is not biased to one side, right? In addition, it should fit the language ability of students. So for example, the phrase homework should be abolished. Abolished is quite a higher level word. It might be more difficult. So you could change that. If your students maybe don't know what that word means, it's a good chance to introduce and teach that word. Or you can change the statement itself and say, there should be no homework allowed, right? And it should have information for students to research. If there's no information, then they don't have the opportunity to research that, right? That's very, very important. Okay, so the debate we watched is known as a parliamentary debate structure, where you saw there was the prime minister and different positions. Now that's quite a formal way of doing debate, but you don't necessarily have to be very, very formal in your debates. You can make it a little less formal. So this is just one structure that will be simple, concise, and will allow still for debate, right? So in this structure, we have the two teams, right? Team A and Team B. And let's say the statement is schools should allow dyed hair. We have Team A who is for this and Team A who is against this. So two teams. So Team A is going to make a speech supporting the proposition, right? Or the resolution. 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute per student, right? So they say, we should allow dyed hair because it allows for blah, 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 blah. Right? Then you give Team B a chance to write out potential responses, and they share their response with the class. So you give them a little bit of time, and then you give Team B to share, well, what you said was blah, blah, blah. Right? And then this is optional, but then you can have Team A reply to the rebuttal, right? Well, you said this in your argument, or you said this in your rebuttal, but actually, and then we have it for the other side. Team B has a chance to speak. Schools should not allow dyed hair, right? Because, and then Team A has a chance to come up with some ideas for rebuttals and share that with the class. Maybe Team B has a chance to reply. And then after that, there is some decision making. Now, how do we make some sort of decision about who has won the debate? Because it is a game, right? So there's typically some sort of decision at the end of who has created the most effective arguments. So this can be you as a teacher are the person who is going to select, right, based on their arguments. You can have a poll from the class. So the class gets to vote which one that they felt was more of an effective argument, right? You can do this through many ways. Maybe you have a panel of judges, of other teachers, parents. So there are many ways that you can have judges for the debates. All right. So how do you actually get to this point, right? How do you actually help your students be able to debate? So first is to prepare some handouts, right? This includes debate expressions. So we heard in the sample the model debate, there was some vocabulary around what the students said to prepare, right? They said things like, first, my first point is blah, 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 they might have said things, some other things like, I'd like to rebut that point, right? So those expressions, and I've actually created a handout with that that I will share with all of you today, because I know it's a lot of work to create these, right? So I've compiled them, and you can edit and change it to fit your classes, but there's going to be some different expressions that I put together. And then one for note taking, right? So how are they going to take notes for their different arguments? And then consider how you're going to have the class structured, right? So it's really nice to have the two teams up front facing the audience. So you may want to turn some of those chairs around as well. You want to model what that looks like, right? It's very hard for students to understand what it looks like unless they have had a chance to see what it looks like, right? So this is a great opportunity for them to see what that model looks like. And it doesn't have to be the high level model. It should probably be a model that is closer to their level, right? Okay, so you'll want to teach the language for debate, right? Which can come from the handout, and you can work on how do you actually apply that language. You then want to assign, right, the positions, right? Who is for, who is against. And you want to provide some background information for students to research. I will be sharing some websites that will be really good for some background research for that, okay? So let's go ahead. Next, you want to give students some time to research and write their opinions, right? They want to write a speech. And there are many types of debates, but you want to keep it at first as simple as possible, right? And this model that I mentioned before is one that can be used with junior high school and up, and maybe even elementary school, right? With, let's see what else. With the language, you want to be simple and build their knowledge based off of what they have already, right? Now, I like to go ahead and after you have 3 reasons, each group will then have a chance to present their speech, right? So you will have, for example, teams of 2, or you can have teams of 3, right? And each person has a chance to present. I also like to have a chance for the audience, the other students, or anyone else who's in the audience to ask questions, right? And for the speakers to have a chance to answer the questions. The focus of this is not correct grammar. The focus is trying to use English fluently, right? All right. So there's lots of different websites that I'd like to share with you. For debate. So let me go ahead and share that with you. So one website I'd like to share is called procon.org. So this is written from Britannica, and you'll see that there are a whole list of topics, right? So school uniforms, homework, right? And what you do is you have, for example, the topic of homework. And it lists out already some different points about that, right? So different arguments, discussion questions. So this is good not just for debates, but even just for any kind of reading. So we have different, is homework beneficial? Pros, cons. So they have different points they can read, and then they can use it in their own words. Here are some sources as well, right? There's also a website called esldebates.com. And this is really great. It actually has lesson plans as well, and articles. So this is, for example, healthcare is a human right and should be free for everyone. So this includes a lot of vocabulary around the topic, but also lesson plans for you as the teacher, right? So here's a reading about it. Different teacher resources, key terms. So this is something that you can use to teach. So it has already lesson plans, reasons to agree, disagree, right? So a lot of great points here. All right. Okay, and then finally, you want to provide feedback to students. And this doesn't necessarily have to be public feedback, but maybe this is written feedback. But in some way you want to share with students different things. And one way to do this is through a rubric, right? So here is a rubric, for example, that looks at 5 different categories. Argumentation, so how well structured is their argument. Clarity and organization, right? The points are clear or unclear and organized in the debate. Presentation skills, so remember, debate is not just about the actual arguments, but are students able to do things like make eye contact, speak loudly and clearly, engage the audience. Fluency, so student is able to speak without too many pauses or mistakes. Response and rebuttal, and this is about the counter arguments that they make and how effective that is, right? So this rubric I will also be sharing with you in order to, it's something that you can modify and edit, but it's something that you can definitely use. And here as well is the language for debates that I was mentioning before. This is just a sample of what part of what it looks like, but it's categorized by different functions, right? So adding a point, introducing a point, giving an explanation, etc. Okay, so many of you may have looked at that debate video and said, wow, that's amazing. I'm not sure that my students are even close to that level. How do I actually still add debates, right? It's really, really hard. And this might be especially good for elementary level or junior high school level, right? Or even lower level high school students who may have a hard time with you if you were trying to get to that full level of debates. So there are lots of other things that you can do. You can build up to that full debate through some activities. The first is known as quick fire. So you give different topics to each student. For example, one student gets, students should be able to dye their hair. Another student gets, homework should be abolished. Another student gets, we should have longer summer breaks, whatever it is, right? And then they have to read the statement and then 2 minutes to give their opinions. You go around the class and you are able to share, right? You can have it do this as a whole class, or you can do this in small groups where different students have different statements and share. Now, give students enough time to read the statement, make sure they understand, and then that they give their opinion. You can also move around the topics and have students work in pairs, right? So instead of as a whole class, you can do groups or you can do pairs, and they have to discuss that in those groups or pairs. Another activity is known as secret jar. So you share a resolution, students write on a piece of paper their opinion, right? So the resolution perhaps is something like, we should start school later, right? We should start school at 9 a.m. And students will write on a paper how they feel, right? Their opinion, why. I agree because blah, 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 blah. They fold it and then they put it in the jar. Now, you get one student to then pick out the paper, right? Okay, I agree because students like to sleep in late, right? Students are too tired in the morning. And then they have to nominate someone else. Okay, another student, you respond. Do you agree or disagree? That student says, I agree because blah, 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 or I disagree because. So it still gets this chance for interaction, right? And a chance to respond. Okay, another activity that you can do is known as 4 corners. So this is a statement, you read a statement or you read the resolution, such as students should be able to dye their hair. And then you have a poster in each corner, and each corner is assigned a different feeling or different opinion. Strongly agree, agree, disagree, and then strongly disagree. So it might be a little hard in a classroom with lots of tables, but students get a chance to stand up and move to each corner. And then in the corner, they are with the others who agree with them, right? So maybe everyone in this corner is strongly agree. Everyone in this corner is strongly disagree. So they have a chance to share their opinions and explain their reasons for why they have chosen that corner. After a few minutes, the students can nominate one student from the corner to share why they chose, and you go around and you ask one person from each group to share, or from each corner to share, right? Now, this is great because students get a chance to share and talk and discuss, but they don't necessarily have to present in front of the class every single time. You know, you only have one person from each corner to share, right? So it's a really good chance for them to share their opinion. It also introduces movement, right, into the classroom, which is very important. Right? All right, so those are just 3 activities for building up to a full debate. So a summary of what we've looked at today, we talked about what is debate. We looked at a model debate, not the whole thing, but you can also watch the whole thing. There will be a link to that in later in the references. You can consider reasons to have debates in the classes. We looked at a simple structure. So there are many, many forms of debate, but you can simplify that to make it work for your class. It doesn't have to be the full structure. And then we looked also at things like how can we add some rubrics? How do we actually look at, you know, how do we actually teach debates in classes with rubrics and language? And then we also looked at additional activities, right? We looked at the 3 different activities: 4 corners, secret jar, and quick fire, those 3 activities that will allow for students to practice the skills of debates without actually doing the full debate, right? So they still get a chance to do that. And then I am sharing in the chat box now the link to the model debate. We also have the link to the 2 websites that I mentioned, ESL Debates and procon.org, which includes lots of good information for students to look through for different resolutions, right? Here are my list of references as well. And then finally, please go ahead and complete a feedback form. This is completely anonymous, so you can share how helpful this webinar was for you. Once you have completed that form, you will have a link to the 2 documents that I was talking about. First, the rubric. Second, the language sheet for debates. So you can download those 2 as well as the PowerPoint today. So please take a moment. I've added the link into the chat box, and you can go ahead and also find the information from today's webinar once you have completed the webinar feedback, which is completely anonymous. All right, I'm going to leave. We have a little bit of time, which is great. So I wanted to leave it open for any questions. Feel free to add questions in the chat box, or you can unmute your mic and ask a question. All right, well, if you have any questions in the future, please do feel free to go ahead and reach out to me regarding the questions that you may have. Maybe something you don't have one now, but something comes up. Please do fill out the feedback form for more to get the resources for today. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate your time. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and thank you for your dedication to teaching. I'll see you all for the next webinar in 2 weeks.